Well, returning now to our top story, the Israeli military says it has confirmed that it has killed Marwan Issa, the deputy military commander of Hamas. Let's bring in Al Jazeera's senior political analyst, Marwan Bashar. He joins me now in the studio. Marwan, just how senior was Issa? Where did he sit within the whole Hamas ecosystem?
Well, presumably, I mean, of course, Hamas is not exactly, open. It's not a government
Sure.
in terms of its military wing, but it's said that he's second in command of the military wing of Hamas. Now, if you ask the Israelis, of course, they would like to make him as if he is as high as possible, because then he is more valuable target, and hence it is presumably a greater success for the Israelis. And the Israeli officials, the Israeli generals, have been quite adamant in the past 5 months to underline the idea that they're going to go after Hamas leaders, right?
Yeah.
And to the mind of many observers, if Israel can get to the top echelon of Hamas in Gaza, it could start believing that it is achieving some form of victory, or at least some form of revenge, right? However, what we know from the history of this conflict, and certainly since Hamas's establishment as a political and military group in the late 1990s, in the late 1980s, Israel began assassinating Hamas leaders in the 1990s. Think about it is that every time Israel declared victory by assassinating one Hamas leader, dozens stepped up to take his place. So the idea of declaring victory because one or two or several Hamas leaders were killed has proven to be more of a facade, more of a deception for public consumption than it is an actual achievement. Because as I said, not only dozens have stepped up to take their place whenever a leader is assassinated, but we've seen from the 1990s onward, from the 2002 onwards, is that with every assassinated generation of leaders, new leaders that took on were even more hardcore than the previous generations. So the previous generations, for example, I don't know, they were doctors and architects and engineers and whatever that happened to be radical, resistant leaders. The new leaders, like, for example, Sinwar, right, the top military leader in Gaza, he spent 22 years in an Israeli jail. The man is so hardcore and so hardened, right, in his heart and mind and ideology and so on and so forth, that he's certainly far more apparently competent and far more radical than all his predecessors. So killing these leaders might be claimed to be a tactical or strategic victory, but in the end of the day, Hamas has proven more than capable of producing more and more leaders.
Am I right in thinking in this conflict so far, Marwan Issa is actually the senior-most Hamas figure who has been killed?
Well, between Arouri and Lebanon, right, who's again...
In Gaza?
Yes. But of course, as we all know, that Hamas, is run more as an organization that's quite hierarchical and has quite the command within the hierarchy that trickles down. So whatever the hierarchy is, it doesn't matter what the geography is. And in fact, some of their most hardcore leaders are, in fact, in that section, right, among the 3 or 4 sections, is the one that is based in the prisons.
Oh, very interesting.
And one of the 3 or 4 main commanders are actually in prisons because they have a prison wing for Hamas.
Marwan, just in terms of assessing what Israel's thinking right now, as you say, they've said very publicly that they plan to destroy the whole of Hamas. For many of them, that means destroying certainly the leadership of Hamas, especially the military leadership. What is your assessment of how that's going so far? I understand that certainly a majority, I believe, of battalion commanders have been taken out. So in terms of the way that Israel is approaching this, in terms of their measures of success, how are they doing?
Well, look, I mean, there's no doubt that after 5 months of bombings, much of it indiscriminate, that some of the collateral damage happened to be Hamas leaders, right? And clearly a lot of them were killed. There's no doubt about that. I'm not sure if it's 2/3, 1/3, 3/4. All of that is just estimates. But I know 2 things to be a fact that we've known thus far the past 5 months. and that's what really is troubling for the Israelis. One is that no Hamas fighters have surrendered voluntarily to the Israelis. The Israelis picked up all kinds of people, called them Hamas, but there are no Hamas fighters that surrenders. Two, Hamas leaders, none of them have capitulated to Israel in Gaza. And these are the two things that are most troubling for the Israelis. And in fact, when you listen to their experts, they keep going over it again and again. How could these people, meaning the leaders and the militants, be so hardcore that not one has capitulated, not one has surrendered?
A very interesting dynamic, certainly going forward now to Marwan Bashara. Thank you so much for joining us again.